Okay. Mick Cronin and the Bruins, they're surging right now. But what can they do with players staying and recruits that can help them surge from the start next season?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, review. Thanks for your support. Hey, you know, the Bruins, they're doing big things on the hardwood, but you could also be doing big things as well with FanDuel, because today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Because new customers, you join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if you win your first bet of $5 or more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, let's take a look at next year, right? The Bruins, they're getting ready. They're about to play some Stanford. They're going to go chop down a tree, hopefully, in Palo Alto. Before we even talk about that in this pod, which we'll talk about later in the next episode, we're going to go and dissect what it means for UCLA next season. Mick Cronin's only signed one recruit, Eric Freeney, and while he's a rising four-star, he's someone that can be a good, hard-working, a good work ethic type of guard that will probably fit the Mick Cronin system in terms of growing, and maybe he's not going to be dynamic from game one, but someone who can certainly fit the UCLA culture right away, right, for Eric Freeney. What the Bruins need is to build around him, whether it's guys staying, and a potential big official visit from a prospect I last talked about in August of 2023 when he was listed to his national team playing in the NBA Africa Academy. Who is that? Khaman Maluach. That's someone who is a 7-2 prospect. Okay, I know UCLA is currently dealing with their own 7-2 prospect in Adayamara, but Maluach is someone who's playing with NBA-level talent, playing against pros as a 16, 17-year-old guy in the NBA Africa Academy, right? This is somebody, Academy Africa, I'm kind of flipping those words. This is someone who's really good. I've talked about him. He's a rising star. And later in the 2023 calendar year, he's turning into a class of 24. Someone like Cooper Flagg did. He's a guy who is expected now to be a top flight overall, number one overall pick. Cooper Flagg became and reclassified the class of 24. Now we're going to go and see the 7-2 product in Maluach join and go to Duke and be the latest top-flight recruit. This is someone in Maluach who is currently going to have some dates. This is from Travis Branham, who the top available recruit in the 24 recruiting class, his upcoming official visits. Early February, this coming up weekend after this podcast, you've got Maluach visiting Kansas. And if we remember a late official visit to Kansas, that stripped UCLA of the opportunity to get Marcus Adams Jr., who is another guy who reclassified from 24 to 23, graduated a year early from Narbonne, and eventually went from Kansas to Gonzaga, then BYU, and is technically eligible as a two-time transfer with the new rules right now in place with the NCAA. So obviously a little dangerous to go to Fog Island and see how everything over there. He goes to Kansas. Next week goes to Kentucky. I didn't even know this was really a possibility, but you can have an official visit with the G League Ignite team. I didn't even know that was possible. You can go officially visit a pro team and see how that organization runs, right? That in-between year when you're in between high school and college or the NBA ranks and ready for the draft, where does he want to go? G League? Does he want to go to NBL in Australia with the next stars? Does he want to stay in a postgraduate year in Africa? Or he might go to the NBA G League and play with the G League Ignite team, all those prospects trying to build up their numbers, build up more stats to prove to the rest of the scouting departments across the NBA that he's ready to go and just doesn't want to deal with this college ranks. And then the end of February, he is visiting UCLA the 23rd to the 24th. This is someone who's 7'2", 235 pounds, just visited Duke, and is going to visit UCLA, right? This is someone who is going to take part a little bit with the Basketball Without Borders during the NBA All-Star Weekend, and he's going to make his decision potentially at the end of February. Someone who is a top-flight big man who has a lot of skill and a lot of important ability that UCLA would like to have with UCLA, who are they going to lose next year? 90 billion%, I would assume, Adem Bona, right? Because he was going to go, if he wasn't hurt, probably. In Bona, I'm not sure how much more he can work on. He's probably gone, right? So Bona, that's going to fill a big hole. Or you're going to lose Bona. You're going to lose Nuba due to eligibility because he's going to graduate after all these years at UCLA. And you're still left wondering, where's Bedeke going to go? What's up with Mata? And Devin Williams is still waiting in the fold to grow. He's played some meaningful minutes trying to develop as a big man. Can UCLA go with the double big man next year if you expect Mara to either go, stay, or not have as much of an impact just yet in his first year or two at UCLA? Well, hey, this is what it says about Maluach. A big man with elite size and length, impactful inside-out game, high major recruit due to his physical tools and touch on his jumper, stepping out to make shots off the catch from three. And he's worked on the way to get inside, use his ability to be a force to score on the block, mid-post, lobs, rebound, block shots at a high rate, and hit catch-and-shoot threes as a 7'2" big man from Africa, right? And by reclassifying, he is now a possible future lottery pick in 2025. All right, you're going to sit there and you're looking at me and tell me, hey, Zach, you already talked and got super hyped about all these guys that the Bruins recruited in the 23-24 cycle, right? This year, where we have Bona and Bedeke and Devin Williams. And it's like, can we get hyped? This is a guy who's playing top flight talent right now, trying to develop, and is clearly, I think, a very talented individual who I think UCLA, considering they have one commit, why not throw another Bona there, right? As much as Cronin's giving a lot of love to Adai and his growth is important, you just never know in this day and age. Maybe Bedeke feels things out and see, like, Amari Bailey was a top-flight freshman, and if he wasn't hurt, probably would have won Pac-12 Freshman of the Year over Adem Bona if he wasn't hurt during the season. He decided to go jump to the NBA, has a two-way contract, and isn't exactly, the flourishing is one thing, but he hasn't turned out to be a Rookie of the Year candidate. He's someone that's going to have to develop over the next couple of years, or he could have come back. Maybe some of these guys are going to go test the waters in the NBA, and they might end up in Europe. They might have good NBA careers, might have a short NBA stint. They're going to just do the college thing for a year and see what happens. Regardless, or they might hit the portal, because we forget there's this huge thing called the portal and how NAL still makes a big thing. And maybe they just want to leave the Mick Cronin system. That's just what happens in this day and age. Guys leave. So I think getting someone like Maluach, who, hey, well, what's the connection to UCLA? Well, if you go into the NBA Academy Africa site, you're like, who is on this coaching staff? You see the name of Roland Houston, someone who sees all the oversights in all player development. He's the technical director. Then you've got the assistant technical director. And then there's a name, Alfred Aboya, player development coach. I think that name rings a little familiar, right? A former player at UCLA, went to 3 Final Fours, played professionally in different countries, coached at Mississippi State, coaches as an assistant coach for Cameroon's national men's basketball team. And he played and he was an assistant and player development coach in the G League. So he can probably, Aboya, unofficially give some love UCLA's way, right? That's in the NBA Africa Academy, the NBA Academy in Africa. That's Alfred Aboya. Remember that name? That should ring some bells. Because, hey, that maybe there's a little connection there. It might be Duke at some crystal balls right now, as it possibly is. Loose, cool crystal balls. Kansas could come in and find a way to sneak some cash, as Bill Self unofficially does all the time. That's just nonsense, right? Because he's been investigated. Kansas can find a way to lure a recruit into Lawrence. And then you've got Kentucky, who's got their own slow pipeline building overseas and out of the country. Kansas speaks for itself in terms of basketball, college basketball immortality day in and day out at Fall Allen. And Duke's going to speak for its own right. But UCLA has a little connection there. And hey, I'm not sure where all these guys are going to go. Adai, I think Cronin's been talking about he's going to stay. I'm not sure where Bedeke's head's at because he hasn't exactly dominated. I'd like him to come back. All these Bruins have a lot of eligibility that are playing this year, can come back another year, which will possibly determine how much Mick Cronin and the Bruins throw at Maluach and how much they go after him with his official visit late February before he makes his decision. I think you still go after the kid. He seems to be a special talent. And hey, where might that go? To join Eric Freeney, a supersized class, you get a smaller, sneaky, good class in 24 to 25, and this team could be dynamite to replace Bona, Nuba. That's another top-flight center/power forward combo you can throw out there with Mata, Betike. You get Maluach in there, and then you bring back Mack. You bring in Freeney. Hopefully, Dalen Andrews continues to grow. Stefanovic stays and is a senior for UCLA after transferring from Utah. You could have a very dynamic lineup, still with Brandon Williams growing. But then there's also the reasoning where he could get crowded out, and with all UCLA has in youth, and if they all stay, less likely that he comes to UCLA in this cycle with him wanting to be probably a one and done and make himself known in the NBA waters. But I think that's something to look out for late February. I'm going to come in and look for UCLA, where I think Adai is staying. Bettercase played himself potentially into staying, while the rest of the big man, Nuba's gone. And then you've got Bona, who's probably headed to the draft. Nothing official. I don't got those types of sources, but just the way it's looking and how it went from last year, I would think he's going to the draft this year. All right, he's going to definitely venture in and take a look at it. Speaking of taking a look, let's take a look at some of the new coaching titles for Chip Kelly's roster, because Chip is staying. It's happening in 2024, at least for now, on Locked On UCLA. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because if you're like me, the big game on Sunday is all about scoring the best seat in the couch. Boom, check. Grabbing your favorite snacks. Check. Yum, 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 yum. I don't even know what's on the docket this weekend, but yum, 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 yum. Placing some super bets. What? That's how you do it with FanDuel, because there's so many different ways for you to end the season on a dub, even if our favorite teams aren't playing on a Sunday. You know, there's still ways to get a dub or 2 or 3. You can stack it in by betting on who will win Super Bowl 58. But FanDuel also has bets for how many players who will score a touchdown, which players will score a touchdown, how many points are scored, and so much more. New customers, join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if you win your first bet of $5 or more. Again, join FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Again, FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, cruising on here at Locked On UCLA. Zach with you guys. A fiery Tuesday in the midst of a rainstorm in Southern California. Atmospheric river and everything in between. So we hope you're safe. If you're listening at home, maybe you're in the Midwest and watching, maybe you're across the world and you're in a different weather system. We hope you're safe there as well. If it's cold, warm, or in between. Because here in California, it can be cold at 70 and it can be cold at 70. It can be warm at 71, whatever it is. Speaking of warm, it's not warm. It's a hot seat. It's burning by the UCLA fan base versus Chip Kelly and the UCLA administration. It's back and forth. It's nutty. We're going crazy. At this point, Chip wants out. We want him out, but he wants in. We don't want him in. It's all sorts of things. The loud fans, from what I've read and seen, it's loud that Chip Kelly is wanted out. He is wanted to be ousted by the fan base. And it's becoming even more apparent and louder that Chip Kelly also wants out. You can read Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk that he's clearly going after other jobs and even touching base with Iowa and Kirk Ferentz on becoming their offensive coordinator. Imagine that combination of an offense-defense. If Iowa had any semblance of an offense with what they've been able to bring in defensively over all those years under Kirk Ferentz, that would be a dominant display of football, I think, if they just tweak something offensively. But that's not going to be the case because Chip Kelly is staying in 2024. How is that the case? Mostly because none of those jobs have gone to Chip Kelly. How everything is played out, it's been the fact that Chip is going to stay. And he's made some coaching title updates to some of these coaches. Maybe nothing that's going to dramatically affect or alter the program, but Tim Drevno, now the running game coordinator and offensive line coach. You've got Jerry Neuheisel, Jerry, passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach. And then Cody Whitfield, who is the special teams coordinator and cornerbacks coach. I think that's the most important role out of all of them, right? You got OC, you got your defensive coordinator, which was already named in Khaman Maluach, but special teams coordinator, out of all those jobs, you could debate between Jerry Neuheisel being involved in the passing game coordinator for this year, how much that would change, and Drevno involved in the running game. I would say the adding on of special teams coordinating to Cody Whitfield, that's a big thing. That's a big task with what UCLA struggled with when it came to kicking field goals, when it came to maybe just changing the return game and telling Chip Kelly, hey, we've got Keegan Jones coming back one more year. Let's put him back there to return. Or if there's a reason why he's not returning, change it this year. So they can get a kick return game and just completely change things. Maybe get funky on special teams coverage. That's, I think, the biggest thing that could maybe just a little bit move the needle in some of these Big Ten games, or when they play LSU on the road in Baton Rouge, that they can win a game that they're not supposed to. But all this signifies, all these things, is that despite all the drama, despite all the rumors, despite the slander and everything, Chip Kelly is coming back in 2024. Whether I like it, whether you like it, whether other outlets like it, the fan base, whether they like it or not, Chip Kelly, as I stated in the most recent Locked On UCLA episode, I just don't see a world at this point now that he's not the head coach. And this just solidifies it, because I believe this was all posted in the afternoon Monday after my podcast was dropped, that he's pretty much staying. You don't just all of a sudden go out, get a big recruit for 25 to commit, although he's probably committing to UCLA more than he is Chip Kelly, and a little bit combined with the relationship he has with Ken Norton Jr. in Weston Port. You add on the fact that, hey, some of these jobs move in. When Chip didn't go to the Raiders, that was the most ideal fit after Dan Quinn became the head coach of the Washington Commanders. It became more and more apparent that Chip's staying. Now, how ugly it gets this year, how great we might be surprised, will be determined. But those are the big switches. And I think Jerry getting more and more roles is only going to help him for his future, because he's still a young, bright coach, has great relationships in recruiting. When people are like, oh yeah, recruit. Who's the highest rated recruit on some scales? Quasi Gilmer. And what did he say when he was recruited and committed to UCLA? He did what he did, the part, because he had the big skit when committing to UCLA. And a certain day, I forgot what was he had a tie to Jerry Neuheisel. I wanted to kind of tie it in to Jerry as to why he committed to UCLA. Now, you got the likes of him getting more and more roles. Whether it affects UCLA this year, I think it helps Jerry Neuheisel in years to come in his coaching career, that he's getting more and more of a role. He's just getting more placed on him as he grows as a UCLA coach. And while there are the far, far outcries that maybe he can be an eventual UCLA coach, that day is not, I think, in my mind, close, although we've seen crazier things happen. But it's great to see him getting more. Drevno getting a run game coordinating spot, just adding on to his plate. And then special teams, that's important. It's all signified Chip staying. Despite the loudness, I keep reading what Mark Schipper, fifth down, college football, all these things that's like, Chip. Well, the time has passed, right? To make the move was in November, which is coming up on nearly 3 months ago, when the Bruins were so ugly and utterly embarrassed in that loss to Arizona State, when they did swing and gate, when they couldn't run the football, fourth down multiple times, when they refused to kick a field goal because the kicking game was so awful, or that they just decided not to get even a shot. Over and over again, that was the time. And then even after the Cal game, you still had a shot. That time's over. Now the support has to come of some sort, even if it's through our teeth. Whether it's Chip smiling like this at us, maybe it's us at Chip. We're just trying to grin through our teeth, knowing it might be a bit painful. But I just don't think Chip, unless the Bruins go like 0-6 to start the year, and that includes an early game against Hawaii, maybe 1-5. Barring a 1-5, 1-6 start, even then, I don't think UCLA would actually do it. Who knows? They would fire him mid-season. They would just wait till the end of the year and wait till the buyouts even less, and then get rid of him and hope some big-name coach is available at the end of the 2024 season. For now, Chip, he's making pieces work. He's moving things, got some guys trying to fill some holes. I'm still very confident that this offense will work this year. The defense is going to be a work in progress, and it's not going to be its 23 version, but there are places where they've been grabbing some good pieces, and even the first part of 25 represents a step in the right direction. I think there's still hope that they're not a 2-win, 3-win, 4-win team. Now things have to break their way. They have to play good football, great football, maybe even be an 8 or 9-win team, which I don't think would be a disappointment after all the disaster that's happened and lack of action that's happened from UCLA and the Chip Kelly front, or coaching, or the portal, or recruiting. There's still hope for this season to not be an utterly embarrassing one, an actual good one. Even put all our thoughts aside for Chip Kelly for a moment. There's still hope. I think there still is hope. Still, it has been utterly chaotic, and it's ridiculous at this point. It's ridiculous. But it'll be a saga that if it changes, and if I'm wrong, we will talk about it. We will talk about it. What we're going to talk about next is UCLA women's basketball, because they have another player who is now no longer with the program, at least playing-wise. And we'll talk about the latest player that is either injured, ill, or this time, and in this case, retired after a surprise post on the UCLA socials last night on the Locked On UCLA podcast. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. Because with eBay Motors, they've got everything to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 120 million plus parts for your number one ride or die, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit every time. It's going to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you want at the prices you want, parts you need, prices you want, because it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that dub. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, wrapping up the Locked On UCLA podcast, we're going to the UCLA women and talking about how the number 9 team in the country, in more of a break of the schedule in terms of the gauntlet they've been facing from the end of January into early February, is going to, in a moment, I would say, although you can't really take anything for granted in this super competitive conference, they get Arizona State, Arizona. All right, we'll talk about that in a moment. But the big news, I believe, later on a Monday night was that Izzy Antsey is retiring from the basketball team. She's retiring from basketball and posted on Instagram, I think together with the UCLA women's page, that in her post, she talked about she's retiring from the sport due to medical reasons. She's had to deal with all the struggles of injuries, multiple surgeries, had trouble coming over because of COVID and travel restrictions, and just too much with the injury bug, and she's going to have to retire. However, she did specify, my teammates and Bruin family are still so important to me that I will be right by their side, cheering them on through the rest of the season. Because first year, she was unable to play and unable to join the team because of COVID-19 travel restrictions. Kind of looking at the Daily Bruin by the Alexis Hinkle article right here, talking about couldn't join the team. Played 27 games in her second year and led the team in block shots. After the year, went on hip surgery and then had to battle through that as a junior. Had a third surgery in April and had just recovered a little bit to see minutes in a good portion of games this year, but not a lot of minutes. And now the Bruins, without Antsey, who's 6'4", would play center, a forward. She's someone who represented size, and if healthy, Corey Close would have used her as much as she could this week, with Bessoir out for the year with the torn ACL. Betts out, undisclosed amount of time. I think still listed day to day, unspecified medical condition, medical illness. And while there was the good news that Corey Close reported before this, also sad news that Antsey can no longer play and is no longer playing college basketball, that Betts is going to return. She expects at some point in the season. That's still unknown at this point. Dugalich and Zontag, according to the UCLA release, and it's been talked about, they are missing this week's games because they're going to go play the FIBA Women's Olympic Qualifying Tournament in Brazil. Dugalic's going to play with Serbia, and then Zontag with Germany. And ironically enough, the first game on Thursday, February 8th in this tournament is Germany versus Serbia. The biggest thing is you hope for health for those two players, because last time one of these Olympic and these international tournaments happened, that's how Bessoir got hurt, tore ACL, and then she's out for the year. So the Bruins are already down multiple players, right? They're already down a lot of size. So there's no Betts, there's no Bessoir, no Antsey. You take away Dugalic, you take away Zontag, and you're hard-pressed to find anybody in this team that is above 6 feet. Gabby Jaquez listed as 6 feet. Got Iwala, who's 6'2", Muse, who's 6'4". But large in part, you don't have anybody who's probably outside of Muse, someone, and that's a true freshman in Amanda Muse, that can operate as a true center with size to compete against the Kevin Brake. Now, the Bruins don't have to do that. They're facing Arizona State. So a large portion of this week will be dependent on the guard play. Will be very dependent on how Kiki Rice rebounds from last week. A little sluggish week for her last week. We'll see how she responds. Osborne carried a lot, and whenever she has an opportunity to carry the team, she tends to do so. Now I think it's up to the team to help her out. All these teammates, all these players for Corey Close's bunch have to come together to battle and get these couple of wins and not take away and not have an ugly loss here. Because I think UCLA is still definitely in the running for a 1 seed. They're flirting with the 2 or 3 seed, and every time I look at the Charlie Cream, when I look at his projections for bracketology, their UCLA is still a 1 or 2 team, and based on who they've beaten, UCLA at its best is still a great team. At their weakest and injury-prone, still a very, very good team. All right, so this is a team who, if they can start getting some wins, because the Bruins right now, if they would have won, could have been about a game behind first place with another date with Colorado looming. Now UCLA is behind Utah in the standings and is in 5th place, tied with USC in the Pac-12. That is how tough this conference is. UCLA is behind Stanford, Colorado, Oregon State, Utah. That game against Stanford was possibly for a 1 seed, if not a 2 seed, and a much easier side of the bracket. But if the Bruins can get through, you're facing Arizona State, who's still 2-8. Arizona is 4-6, and they've knocked off a couple of upsets this year. You get those wins, you hold serve, you hope everybody comes back healthy, you hope you get Lauren Betts back in the fold, and everybody's playing well. The Bruins can still earn the 1 seed, because I think UCLA has a shot at it, obviously with the amount of big-time wins, but you're not going to get that if you keep giving up your mulligan, right? The mulligan right now, I think, is the Washington State game without Betts, and that they nearly came back and beat the Cougars after Charlize Ledger-Walker got injured in that game, and is unfortunately out for the year, which is a terrible blow for the Cougars, who were just rising, it seemed like, at the right moment to become another Cinderella dark horse challenging in the Pac-12 supremacy. UCLA, you keep some wins, keep going. They can flirt with the 1 seed, the 2 seed, and not drop off to a 3, or if you have a rough back end to a 4 seed. I don't think they're a 4 seed at all, but hey, you suffer some losses. You lose to Arizona State. Maybe there's a tough game coming up that they do drop. You still have the Pac-12 tournament. In a worst-case scenario, there's still 3 to 4 losses. That's tough to get a higher seed, despite their big resume. I'm not sure how they would help or hurt them with all the teams in the West Coast being so good, because then you might be a 2 seed, but you're stuck in South Carolina's bracket if things go awfully wrong. I think you get some wins. You're missing a lot of size. And based on how things play out, the Bruins, I think at best case at this moment with 4 losses in conference, can either be in 2nd or in 3rd place by the time the season wraps up and have a very good resume. And despite being in 3rd in their own conference, can say, hey, injuries struck us. They still got some good wins. They held serve, and they can maybe get that 4th 1 seed or one of the highest 2 seeds possible and set themselves up for success in the NCAA tournament, the Pac-12 tournament, and the rest of the conference year coming up, right? So you've got retirement, injury, Olympic status, illness, a lot of wild factors plaguing this team right now. That's not going to have a lot. And we've seen other teams that get hurt and have not too many players. They just forfeit their games. They don't even play. UCLA is going to have to grind and battle. These games against Arizona State will be a lot tougher than they look on paper. It'll be a lot closer, but don't be worried because they probably will be. They just got to come out the win. No matter how it looks, they got to beat the Sun Devils and the Cats. And just hold on for those players to come back, Zontag and Dugalich, and at some point, hopefully, in her best form, Betts. And then, boom, this team can be rocking and rolling like they were to start conference play. And where we're rocking and rolling, it's the beat of our own drum, the toot of our own horn, and saying so long and farewell. Because next episode of Locked On UCLA, we're to talk about UCLA Stanford. We'll go a little bit more into these UCLA Arizona State numbers on the women's side. And we'll tease some softball because you know football is going to bring the drama and the breaking news. Recruiting for 25 is heating up. All those things and more on Locked On UCLA. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.